Iran seeks to get out of Fatf Blacklist amid domestic political divisions. North Korea and Myanmar are the other two countries on the global financial blacklist as Tehran promises to continue efforts to get out of it. Tehran, Iran says it will continue efforts to get out of a blacklist of a prominent global watchdog on money laundering and terrorism financing despite 20 years of obstruction from domestic opponents. The statement by the Financial Intelligence Unit of Iran's Ministry of Economic Affairs on Sunday came 2 days after the Paris-based Financial Action Task Force FATF renewed its years-long blacklisting of Iran, according to a report by the official IRNA news agency. The FATF also ramped up measures aimed at isolating Iran from global financial markets with a particular focus on virtual asset service providers VASPs and cryptocurrencies. It recommended member states and financial institutions around the world to even the flow of funds involving humanitarian assistance, food, and health supplies, as well as diplomatic operating costs and personal remittances are recommended to be handled on a risk basis considering the terrorist financing or proliferation financing risks emanating from Iran. Iran has been blacklisted by the FATF for years and is currently on the list in the company of just two other countries, North Korea and Myanmar. Since October 2019, Iran has had heightened measures like supervisory examination and external audit requirements recommended against it and has been subject to effective countermeasures since February 2020. This contributed to making access to international transactions increasingly difficult or impossible for Iranian banks and nationals and made the country more dependent on costlier shadowy third-party intermediaries for transactions. The new countermeasures emphasize existing frameworks but also specifically cite virtual assets, signaling an increased focus. The fact that the FATF also urges countries and global institutions to remain wary of risks of having any dealings with Iran may mean even more limited transaction opportunities for Iranian entities and nationals. Small banks maintaining old correspondent relations with Iranian counterparts may also reconsider after being recommended to re-evaluate existing links. The isolation has hobbled state-run or private income streams and contributed to the continuous depreciation of the Iranian rial over the years. The FATF, formerly known by its French name, was established by the group of 7 G7 countries in 1989 to combat money laundering but later had its mandate expanded to countering financing of terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. It has been formally raising concerns about Iran since the late 2000s, which is also when it started calling for countermeasures as international tensions grew over Iran's nuclear program and the country was sanctioned by the United Nations Security Council. But a year after Iran signed a landmark 2015 nuclear deal with world powers that lifted the sanctions, the FATF also acknowledged a high-level political commitment from Iran and agreed to an action plan for the country to address its compliance requirements. The centrist government of President Hassan Rouhani, who had clinched the deals, pressed ahead with ratifying several laws needed to fulfill the action plan despite opposition from hardliners who were firmly against the increased financial transparency and international supervision. But United States President Donald Trump unilaterally reneged on the nuclear deal in 2018, imposing a maximum pressure campaign that has remained in effect until today. The move empowered the argument from the hardliners in Tehran, who succeeded in blocking the ratification of the rest of the FATF-linked legislation, leaving the issue dormant for years. Washington has retained the sanctions over the years, with some of the latest including the blacklisting in January of 2 United Kingdom-based cryptocurrency exchanges allegedly connected to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The UN Security Council. Sanctions were also reinstated against Iran in September when Western powers triggered the snapback mechanism of the nuclear accord. They include an arms embargo, asset freezes and travel bans, as well as nuclear, missile and banking sanctions that are binding for all UN member states. The Iranian hardliners railing against any progress on FATF-related legislation have presented two main concerns. They assert that fully adhering to the watchdog's guidelines would curb Tehran's ability to back its axis of resistance of aligned armed groups in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen and Palestine. The Axis lost its base in Syria with the fall of President Bashar al-Assad in December 2024. Hardliners have also suggested that Iran's ability to circumvent U.S. sanctions may be significantly compromised by disclosing all the information required by the FATF. Iran has been selling most of its oil to China at hefty discounts, using a shadow fleet of ships that turn their transponders off to avoid detection in international waters. The country has also for years been forced to rely on a capillary network of currency exchanges and intermediaries, some of them based in neighboring countries, such as Turkey and the United Arab Emirates. To assuage some of the domestic concerns, Two FATF-related laws ratified by Iran in 2025 were passed with special conditions and reservations infused in the text. One of the main conditio,